Hello, everyone, and welcome to Beginnings, the show that asks, where do creative people come from? My name is Andy. I'm the host of the show and a writer and performer based in Los Angeles, California. How is everyone doing this week? Let's not talk about current events. Let's talk about... Well, you know what? Let's just talk about today's guest, because this is a delight. I'm a big fan of today's guest's music. And who is that person? Why, it's Claire Rousay. And if you don't know who Claire is, I'm going to read you her bio right now. Originally from Winnipeg, Manitoba, experimental musician and composer Claire Rousay grew up in San Antonio, Texas, and began playing piano at the ripe age of 4 years old. Dropping out of high school in her mid-teens, Claire began playing music professionally and in 2017 released her first album, Blip, on Mended Dreams. Since then, she's released over 24 other albums and EPs on Mended Dreams, as well as Orange Milk, Shelter Press, and her latest, A Little Death, just came out in October on Thrill Jockey, and folks, it's great. I have been a fan of Claire's music for a couple years now. Her new album is one of my favorites of this year, and she's wonderful. We have a delightful conversation about growing up evangelical, what that meant, faith, even though I don't usually like talking about people's creative processes. I did ask Claire about that, and we get into that. That's interesting. Of course, as always, we talk about chilies. I should say, I made a huge mistake here. And I said that Chili's has great mozzarella sticks. I was wrong. I was thinking of Chi-Chi's, which maybe you remember was a restaurant that is now defunct. I think maybe there's one left in the world, somewhere in Europe for some reason. But Chi-Chi's, they have great mozzarella sticks. Chili's, I looked them up online. Not great. So I feel like I owe you all, I owe the listenership an apology. I owe Chi-Chi's an apology. And, you know, at the end of the day, I owe God an apology. But yeah, Claire's awesome. And I hope you enjoy our talk. Coming up on the show, got a lot of folks from the world of indie rock that I've talked to that I'm excited for you to hear. Cassie Carlson from Gorilla Toss. I talked to her growing up at Cape Cod. Real interesting stuff. Stephen Brown from Tuxedo Moon. Avant-garde post-punk band from San Francisco, very much entwined in all the things that were going on in San Francisco in the late 60s and 70s. So that was really interesting. So stay tuned for those. But for now, let's talk to Claire. Mabel has recently taken to not liking her food after about 6 or 7. It's prescription food. So there's a lot of like whimpering. Give me different food. Give me different food. And I'm like, I can't. And then whimpering until eventually hours later she eats the food.
No, I get it. We got a bunch of like that pre-made meal food that is like prescription for Luna yesterday. It's thawing right now in the fridge. So we were on a very similar wavelength. She was up all night. She wears a diaper. She's old. She's 13.
Yeah. I was basically running a hospice for our cat for the majority of this year, and he did not have control of his bowels at one point, and our bed was basically covered in... So my wife would sleep on this small space on the left side. I would sleep on the small space or go onto the couch. And then the rest of it was covered in pee pads for him. So
yeah, pee pads right there. We got him. I understand it so deeply well. I got the cat over there who doesn't have any. She's older, but she has 3 legs, so she's got other issues. But we're really on a similar path this year.
Claire, what are we doing with our lives? Where we are,
just taking care of animals. Every dollar I make just goes into the thousands of dollars it costs to keep these guys alive.
We basically, for couples therapy, the Patreon for it, we bill it as essentially a GoFundMe for the vet bills.
I completely get it. We are here at a loss sometimes, and we got a new mattress because the dog peed on the bed too many times. It's just it never ends. I got like a Bandcamp subscription. That money is basically pet stuff. Although, and then sometimes I'm like, oh, but they deserve so much more than just the bare minimum medical stuff. So I'll like buy puzzles and treats and toys, all of the stuff.
Yeah, that's Naomi. Naomi essentially on Chewy being like, what else can we get? I'm like, Mabel doesn't play with the stuff that she has now. I don't know if you should get her more stuff, but
I know that I'm like always on Chewy, and my girlfriend's like, no, like they take returns no matter what. If they don't like the food, like they're so good with the returns. That way we can just like get more stuff. And if they don't like it, then we return it. And the other day we got a bunch of packages at different times. I like because when I'm on tour, and then my girlfriend works like out of the house a lot, so it's like packages will come, and neither of us will know if it came or not, and we'll be like, one of us will be on Chewy being like, our package never came. We'll get like a $40 refund. And the other one's like, dude, there's like 45,000 cans of cat food in the cabinet right now. Little grift. I don't know if you're looking for $45 every so often, but it does work.
Chewy's the one corporation I don't think I would grift. There's plenty of corporations that are dedicated to literally the annihilation of all human life at this point.
Chewy is not one of those.
Chewy is not one of those.
I think the grift is unintentional, but I also don't feel bad about it because we give them so much money that an honest mistake once or twice. What's up, Daphne?
I really feel like the way that you said honest, that was in italics. An honest mistake.
Yeah, it was an honest mistake. Also, you're getting a really rare situation. The swirly chair I'm in with this cat, she got 3 legs. She doesn't like to be unstable. She's like jumping into the swirly chair to be in my lap. Never does this. She doesn't like being cuddled or held. And now she's just...
I don't mean to be self-aggrandizing, but she's reading my energy, I think.
I'm pretty sure she's connected to you in a way that maybe she's just going through me. And hopefully you can feel the love.
Yeah. Here's the thing. Have you... maybe this is too much too fast. Because the start of the question is, have you always been a pet person? And then the other half of it was, do you want kids?
Oh, I love that. Pet person. Haven't always been a pet person. When I was growing up, my parents had a lot of rules about which animals we could have, usually like low cost, low maintenance, and never something that lives really long. It was like a fish, hermit crab, hamster household. Mm-hmm. And the hamsters took a lot of pushing. Mm-hmm. And then eventually my mom kind of did like I'm gonna be the fun parent and got us cats. And then, and we had a bunny at one point. That was kind of when it shifted, where it's like animals that live a long time. And that's when I was like, love animals. And I was also working as like a pet sitter for our neighbors when I was like 10.
Okay.
So I've always been like an animal person, but I haven't been like a pet person until like a hermit crab, goldfish, they don't really love you. But like this situation that's happening right here.
Yeah.
I'll be thinking about this on my deathbed. Kids? No kids. No, I am almost, and I'm so scared to say this. I'm going to get like, all my friends with kids are going to hate me. It's like, I'm almost like anti-kid. I don't dislike other people's kids. And I think kids deserve to be in public spaces and all like the things where people are like, people who hate kids in like restaurants and stuff. I'm like, not one of those. I like think that kids kind of have this like magic to them.
Sure.
It's like, special or whatever. I don't want a kid.
You don't have the the thing that with Naomi and I, we just don't have the feeling. Like we don't want, there's no like desire. It's the same thing like when I think about faith, I don't have whatever that thing is that other people have when it comes to faith. There's just not that thing in me. That connection to the divine. It's the same thing with kids. There's no desire.
I totally get that. I feel like, I don't know. It's also like kind of a selfish thing where I'm like, maybe I don't have faith because I want to do whatever the fuck I want to do. And then also like, I don't want to have kids because it's like, then it would ruin my chances of touring and the measly like profit margins that can exist in experimental music touring. I'm like, well, that's going to go away if I have a child, and then I'll have to get a job that I hate. And I worked so hard my whole life to finally have a job that I like. I don't want to do that. But, you know, I've been with partners who've talked about kids. I've been on the fence about kids. But now I'm like, man, I don't want to have to like bring a kid into the world now when I feel like in 25 years it's going to be like water is going to be an issue.
Yeah. Well, I mean, the forecasts, I would say the optimistic forecasts are that with climate change, we're going to hit 3C by 2050 or so, and that's going to start the genuine breakdown of all societies. So that's part of it. I think all of this stuff, and this is the question I have for you, all of this stuff that I say is just some kind of rationalization ex post facto, when really I just don't want kids. And I can say like, well, I want to do what I want to do. And I want to, you know, I'm worried about what's happening, you know, between COVID, between other pandemics that'll possibly happen in the future, global warming, all this stuff. I can say that, but I just, at the core of me, there's nothing that wants to, I like having nieces and nephews.
Exactly. It's like everything else in my life, my decision and almost kind of, I don't know what the right word would be, but the strong desire to not have children is entirely self-serving.
Oh, okay. Well, that's interesting. That's when you say totally, sorry, I know there was more there, but this like piqued my interest. When you say that, does it come from a narcissistic place? And as I'm going to give you choices, I don't know how you can necessarily pull these out from each other, but I'll say it and then you can respond however you want. Does it come from a narcissistic place where it's just, I want to do what I want to do, period? Does it come from a creative place where you're like, I know that there's stuff that I have these impulses, these creative impulses, and I got to follow them out. And I know that having a child would interfere with that. Or is it something maybe not narcissistic? Maybe that's a little too far, but like definitely a kind of a egocentric, perhaps.
Yeah. So my deep, intense self-hatred is like, oh, of course I'm a narcissist and stuff like that. And then I talk to my girlfriend who is a therapist and says, you're not a narcissist. I can spot that. That's not what's going on.
Right. Not clinically.
Yeah. So, I mean, and I want to say it's creative and, you know, also maybe a combination of the ego thing and the creative thing where I'm like, my creativity just brings so much joy to so many people. I don't need a child to maybe like experience the joy from, because it's always about me. It's like the creativity from, you know, my creativity. I don't need a child to experience that, my greatness. I can just have a bunch of other, you know, 65-year-old white men in the UK experience my greatness. And everything will be okay. I'll get paid in the sterling. Can I curse on here? I can't.
Yes, you could curse.
I'll get paid in like the pounds. It'll be great. Conversion's great. American dollar's down. Still no child. Come back. But yeah, I don't know. I think the desire to not have kids is, if I would have to stop my crazy person schedule to take care of a kid, and schedule being like my creative impulses at random times of the day, but then also like, you know, bouncing around the world. Like, I don't know. I decided the other day I'm going to New York. Instead of going for 4 days, I'm going for 3 weeks.
Nice.
Can't do that with a child. I'm like, oh, I got one show. I'll stay there almost a month.
Yeah.
Yeah. And it's like, I don't know. It's just the way it goes. But I don't know. You don't want kids because you're a narcissist or what?
No, I just don't.
Is that what you're asking?
This is what I'm trying to interrogate, I guess, is that kind of, I just don't have the impulse. And everything I've said about it is just some kind of like explanation of it, but it really is just starts with the impulse, right? And also, I mean, you got to have an extended trip to New York. The Times Square Olive Garden has so many different meals, right? You can't just, you got to keep going back to get all the different ones. Plus unlimited breadsticks every time.
See, but it's like, if I did have a child, although they're pretty one plate per person there, I did go the other day and it was very strict. One plate per person.
Wait, hold on. Sorry, Claire. You went to Olive Garden. You live in a major city. You went to Olive Garden by choice?
Oh my God, dude. I went to Olive Garden the other day. Before that, I have a little group of friends, and there's four of us. Each of us have a birthday, and every time we do that, it's usually at like a chain restaurant. And go Chili's, go Applebee's, Olive Garden. Yeah, that's like kind of the energy of that group, and it's very earnest. It's not like you know, the like irony millennial type thing.
Mm,
It's very like genuinely like unlimited food for a,
sure.
a reasonable amount of
I'll
money.
give you Chili's. I think if I remember correctly, it's been a long time, but I believe they have very good mozzarella
They
sticks.
do. The chicken crispers are great. They're very LGBTQ friendly and
Wait, how? Do you mean wait to start that
oh,
appetizer itself, or do you mean Chili's?
it tastes like a gay person. Um
Fair.
it's no, they have really good hiring and employee kind of like ethics around hiring and practices and non-discrimination and things like that. I usually go and I'm like, yeah, there's not like a lot of trans people who like are at Chili's. So when I go, I'm expecting to be the only trans person at Chili's. And then usually it's somebody working who's also trans at Chili's. And I'm like, kind of see what's
Uh,
going on. And I feel like, okay, this is a safe space. This is a
uh,
safe space for me to completely just like demolish 4,000 calories of food in a sitting.
yeah, more calories than you need in half a month. Yeah.
Yeah. Yeah, you could feed a whole family, including children, with that many calories, but not me. Not me.
But okay, so wait. I have another question. I have lots of other questions, but I'm just like trying to figure out why I'm asking this now is because I'm trying to figure out how much of your decision making is emotional first and how much and then later on you're going to attach a reason to it. And how much is like a logical reasoned argument that you then follow through.
90% emotional, 10% thought through. Impulse control has gotten better over time,
Mm.
something I've worked on, but very emotionally driven. It's funny. I was in therapy the other day and I was talking to my therapist and I was like, yeah, I just feel very numb. I'm kind of just operating this like baseline thing. It's like little blips here and there of like feeling stuff. She's like, I don't think of you as a numb person at all. You have a lot of deep feelings. And then I come home and tell my girlfriend, I'm like, oh yeah, just talking about being numb. My girlfriend's like, oh yeah, you're super numb. Yeah. And I was like, oh, there's interesting different perspectives here. So my therapist is saying that I'm taking all my choices are really emotional. And then at
But
home, it's like I'm being perceived differently. So I think
yeah. What do
what
you
is
mean when you say
happening,
numb? Yeah, when you're talking about numbness, is that just like, do you mean like the feelings are going? This is what I figured out in therapy when I was younger, before I kind of was like in touch with my emotions, was that they were still happening, but they were like in a cage in my heart and like trapped in there. And then they were like, so it was happening. It was just, I was not acknowledging that they were happening.
see, that was the situation. And then it's also like I pick and choose when that cage gets open and closed. So obviously in therapy, I'm like, and this is the 10% where I'm like really logical. I'm like, I'm paying so much money to be here. I might as well just be as open as possible.
Mm.
I want to get the money more than fix myself or be well adjusted. I want to get my money's worth. Similar to the chain restaurant unlimited breadstick situation. So I would
Unlimited
say,
breakthroughs.
yeah, exactly. And it's like I'm going to get as many breakthroughs as I can in 50 minutes. And I think Olive Garden is the same way, but I would say mostly emotionally driven. All the things I'm doing are really kind of geared towards what I want. The 10% that's like really logical and thought out, I think is something that I've learned. It definitely wasn't always 10%. It was growing over time. I would say maybe it's even more than 10% now, but I don't know. Are you all emotion? Are you like really logical? Think things out, or
It's an ongoing project of reconciling the two halves of myself into one full adult, even though I am well into middle age, but raised very rationally and not unemotionally, but just rational first. And then only within the last 15, 20 years have I started to acknowledge and allow myself to feel and
Ooh.
allow you know, and I say allow as if that's like like I made choices in therapy and I made choices in trying to be more free, I guess. But, you know, when I say it like it's a choice to, I don't know. I don't even know how to characterize shifting one's ability to be vulnerable. Like, I don't even know how it happened besides just knowing that it needed to happen. Otherwise, I would be an unhappy person. Does that make sense?
That makes sense. Yeah. I think like being, I also try to like figure out the difference between being an unhappy person and like feeling isolated or like unintentionally isolating yourself.
Uh huh.
Because I feel like those are different things sometimes, and then sometimes it's kind of the same. But because it's like I don't know, some people like when I'm very isolated, I'm quite happy. I love alone time, and I love when
Sure.
I'm like, it's just like I want it to be just right. So it's like I want to be the equal amount of distant little mystery, misunderstood, kind of make that up in my head and something nice and big, but legitimately isolated from a lot of stuff. But then I also am like, if it gets too intense in any of those categories, like it gets too far, then the unhappiness kind of sets in. I don't know if you're
Mm.
like a solitary person or not, but
Oh, very much.
I
It-
assume anybody who owns a microphone with like an arm like that is also solitary. The solitary thing because I know I do,
wow. Wow. What a read.
Ah, dating a therapist. I'm learning. I'm learning.
Mm. But were you raised this way? Like how emotional was your family when you were growing up?
Both my parents are very intelligent and pretty logical, but we grew up like super involved in the evangelical church, which is just like emotions to the max. So it was, I mean, it probably makes sense. It's like the combination of like very rational thinking and like being informed and intelligent, but then still being like, God's moving.
Wait, God's moving? Like moving? Like what do you mean?
Like moving through you and things like that. There's like stuff you
Uh,
can't control. A lot of faith back in the day. Less faith now.
mm,
But yeah, no, growing up like that, oh my God, it's like a combination of like having smart parents, like, and then somehow being in this thing where I'm like, is this smart? And not that being smart is the most important thing in the world, but just being like, I just can't understand how like, my smart, well-adjusted parents would be involved in this. But then it's like a community thing, and they know that like maybe being involved in the community is like what makes you well-adjusted.
huh.
Yeah, I grew up with like a really good balance of that stuff. The evangelical kind of like I was at church like 4 or 5 days a week, super involved, and I believed it so deeply, very emotional, very like I prayed. It's like a 13-year-old preaching at church, like trying to tell other 13-year-olds like what's up, God's moving through me, speak to you, and things will work out if you just stop being gay. Something extreme. Yeah, I know. That really kind of did a 180 in my life.
Sure. Sure. I guess the thing that I'm trying to figure out though is like because you said your parents are intelligent. The thing that like when you get to the extreme ends of any faith, whether it's Judaism, Islam, Christianity, right? My horseshit detector like kicks in because it's so thick with hypocrisy that I have
Yeah.
trouble reconcile. Like it's too much friction in my brain, and so I can't handle it. You know, I've asked so many in real life friends who grew up in different evangelical movements, whether it's Pentecostal or something else, people on this show, on my other show, right? I don't think there is an answer. I still can't get around that kind of like base hypocrisy that's there at the core where you have God's love, right? God's unconditional love. And yet these things that say like you will go to hell or something bad will happen if you are this kind of person, right?
Oh, totally. I mean, and then even all the destruction on the earth. So
Yeah.
it's like, you got
Yeah.
it's 2052. You got the water wars. Somebody decided to have a kid right now.
But those two things clash so much that it really gives me like a genuine headache. Like I can't like it causes friction in my brain. And so that kind of stuff, I don't know how to reconcile those things. And I have to assume that you compartmentalize. Is that true?
Yeah, and then also just like aren't as informed with like certain secular things, right? You like kind of just not just choose to not learn. That way it's easier to argue. But what I learned was like, you grow up in thinking it's like this very linear thing and you're diving deep in, right? But like the deeper you go on this like so-called like linear path, it's like there's more friction as you get deeper. And then every time there's too much friction, you want to answer to a question and you're kind of just getting rerouted back to like whatever you learned right before that. So it's like, oh,
Uh-huh.
but it's like just self-referential. And then you realize like after that's happened so many times, it's like you're so deep in this thing, there's tons of friction, it's super complicated. You want to answer to this kind of like abstract or like hypothetical. And it just points you back to like closer to the beginning every time. And then you're like, oh, it's just circular logic. It's not
Uh-huh.
actually linear. It's like if you don't go deep enough, then and you're like, learning at like a really slow pace, or like you're not necessarily doing a ton of deep diving or like research, it doesn't start circling back as much. But then if you go really deep, which I did as a teenager, I was like, I'm not gonna say like a genius over here, but I was like a smart kid and like curious. I'm a curious person. So it's like I started doing that and I started deconstructing it all. And then I went to like tons of therapy for people who have like religious trauma and like are deconstructing an entire worldview that like does not, it just doesn't work with like what the real world is. Like I didn't really know how evolution worked until I was like an actual adult.
Mm.
So it's like these things where it's like, even if I did abandon this entire way of thinking, this entire like life and like view that I have, I don't have anything else to go to. So it just feels like it's either this or a void. So you have to do tons of work, like intellectually, but then also like emotionally to be able to like not just adjust to something, but like learn something to adjust to first. Cause
Mm.
it's like, it's either you just dump it all and then start living again. And then it's like you're starting from the ground up. And that is not how to be a well adjusted person.
Yeah. I mean, obviously you said like you just don't investigate, or when you do investigate, the flow chart just routes you back to the beginning, right? But like it seems fraught with contradictions. I think us talking has kind of brought that out to me, that it's even again, I say at the core, there's this contradiction between God's unconditional love, supposedly, right? Yet all these things like you're taught these people are living their lives wrong. Even though I'm going to say this, I went and a couple of weeks ago looked up, I was like really curious, like, oh, what does the Bible really have to say about being gay? And it doesn't seem like there's anything really in there. It seems like it's all kind of either mistranslated or it's just like kind of ambiguous. So anyway, the point is like some of this stuff is just actual genuine horseshit. But like,
No, yeah. I mean, people interpret, and then you have all the different denominations that interpret things literally or figuratively, or like have this like new system that they like judge it against. But keep going.
but at the core is a contradiction, and then because the core of it is a contradiction, there's all these other little contradictions that spring up from it, like mushrooms. Great metaphor, but you know what I mean, right? You got all this like fungus kind of like springing, these contradictory fungi springing up out of it. And I have to assume that some of the stuff I see in culture where it feels very, where evangelical points of view, or people who grew up evangelical who are still subscribed to that as a belief system, seem a little off. And I'm stepping lightly with my language, but I'm wondering if that, maybe you have insight, maybe not, into, is it because of all those contradictions? Because you're just kind of like holding your worldview together with bales and bales of masking tape.
Yeah, I agree with you. I mean, the reason they're off is because they were homeschooled. That's what happened. But no, I totally agree. It's like you have this thing that's very fragile and you're doing all you can to keep it glued together. Like, and as chunks fall off and you're reconstructing it, if you want to get into like building an image for it, it's like you have a piece of pottery that breaks and it keeps chipping off. It's like the more times you glue stuff back onto it, the more like abstract the form becomes. And then by the end of it chipping off and losing so many pieces, it's like the whole, and then there's like a bunch of glue, and there's a bunch of shit that doesn't belong. It's like all you're doing all you can to keep it together, and it's like unrecognizable by the end. Like it's a flawed instrument or whatever. So I think that's kind of how all of that works. I mean, the fact that like you can deconstruct some of these evangelical views or like more conservative religious arguments, like using memes, kind of tells you everything. It's like the fact that that is like actually can like in a quite valid way like take care of that argument. It's like, okay, a single meme.
Do you think that's a hard and fast rule? If like you can use Ash from Pokemon to argue against your point of view, then maybe your one's point of view is not quite solid.
Here's the thing. If you're using Ash from Pokemon to argue against this thing, who invented Ash from Pokemon? God. He made everything. So what? He's going to make the meme that tears him down?
There's the medieval question. Could God create a meme that could disprove its own existence?
Definitely. I without a doubt. Yeah. It's a whole complicated system. But you know, when you're in it, you're kind of, you just reject so many things on the outside, or you find other fixes on the inside because you just want to be there. Sure. And I think that works with anything, right? Like music industry, it's like, it's so broken. I'm having such a hard time. Everybody I know is having a hard time. It's like all this stuff, but it's like you still find ways to be like, no, I'm in this for life. I'm a lifer. It's like, okay. Like, yeah, you know what I mean?
Yes, as someone in the entertainment industry, yes, I do.
Yeah, you find a way to make sure that like you'll stay in forever. So it's like you're always going to find a fix, and like a little reroute to keep you in the game. So I think of it the same way.
For me, it's because I've tried so many other things, and none of them fulfilled me in any real way. In the same way that I will put up with all of the bullshit of the entertainment industry in order to be paid to write a script.
Yeah.
Whereas I wouldn't put up with, when I was a professor, I wouldn't put up with the bullshit of academia to write a philosophy paper. Like it wasn't worth it. Does that make sense?
Yeah. No, it makes sense. The payoff is just like maybe greater sometimes, or it's just like closer to home. Like it's just more of what you want. I don't know. I was telling somebody the other day that they're like, why do you make the music you make or whatever? I was like, because it's the ideal music for me. When I make music, I'm like, this is what I want music to sound like, and then I can't find it.
Yes.
So I make it. So it's like, okay, well, you know, if I do have the ability to make something that I'm like, this is the ideal version of this thing that I'm really into, I'm going to do anything I can to make sure that happens.
Can I ask? I ask this sometimes on the show. It's a little bit left of what I want to talk about, but does a piece of music, does it originate from an idea in your head, or does it originate from just fucking around on an instrument or on, you know, something and putting it together that way? Or it could be a mix. I mean, I'm just wondering, like, where does an idea originate?
I think it differs for the person. For me, it's definitely, I mean, it's like a combination. Usually I love extremes. I love like black and white thinking. I love like just like super extreme ways of living. I have like pretty bad, like different, I'm like diagnosed with OCD, and I have like a bunch of different like obsessions and compulsions and stuff. Funny enough, like for as much music I make, that doesn't really fall into that. But I'll do this thing where I'm like, oh yeah, I only want to wear black clothes. Or it's like, oh, I found like a hand sweatshirt that I really like. I'm just going to wear that forever. And then instead of being like, maybe I'll try this out for a week and then get rid of all my other clothes, I'm like a declutterer. Yeah, the opposite of hoarding. It's great. But for the impulse versus like fucking around, it's like the one thing in my life that I don't fall into that like black or white kind of like extreme thinking. I'm always like, yeah, I mean, I got into music from like improvising, right? And I think I learned music because my mom's a piano teacher. So it's like I learned how to play music by somebody very formally instructing me and like teaching me how to read music and play with good technique. But then I got interested in playing rock music through like jamming with neighbors, like on instruments I didn't know how to play, but just kind of like figuring it out like intuitively and then like improvising. And then I got really into like very like out there free jazz, improvised music. But then I'm like self-taught with like recording gear and I know quite a bit about like production. So it's like these different things. And music's kind of been the only place where I feel balanced in that way. So I think when I'm coming up
Huh.
with music, it's like it's less of a one thing or the other. And I honestly would even say it's less about coming up with the music and it's more just about like seeking this balance that I never get anywhere.
Yeah, that's what I was going to ask
Yeah.
you. If you do you think you were drawn to it for that reason? But you said yes. Yeah.
Yeah, definitely. And you know, like the building blocks of like basic composition or whatever. It's like you have these very universal ideas of like structure or like tension release, like all these different things that like, you know, make music that people can kind of relate to really, I don't know, in like an accessible way. It makes music what music is. So it's like this balance is always trying to be achieved. I mean, even like mixing music from like a music production perspective, it's like so many people just want the mix to be like balanced, like everything to fit the way that you want it to fit. So I think the creative process is that way too. Like I want it to just be balanced.
Do you think you do that when you were just talking about like the effects that it has in a listener? Do you intentionally go into composing saying this is going to, or what I would ideally like this to do in a listener is X, Y, or Z? Because I was thinking, as you were saying that, I was like, I'm finishing up a script right now. And I think it's probably just at this point, I've been writing for a long time. I've internalized the ability to do that. So I don't have I have an intention for an idea. I'm like, I want this to do this thing. I want this script to do X, Y, or Z. But like in building in the kind of like way that I would want someone, if it ever gets made, which it's not going to, but like if it ever does, right? That I don't have that thought that it would do something in a person, but that stuff is built in naturally because I've internalized how to do that. Does that make any sense at all as a question?
Yeah, I mean, I grew up playing music in church, and it's all about, I mean, the music is, especially in evangelical kind of like Christian church services, like kind of like rock, really emotional, like Coldplay-esque music. That's the thing that manipulates people. It's like the preaching can too, but it's a combination of all these things, right? Like very basic music ideas that are like, gets loud and then it's quiet and then somebody's talking very passionately. And then like, as the passionate talking or preaching kind of builds up, the music's like slowly rising. There's like a little tension, little release, tension release, and then it's like building, building, building. And the dynamics are like really extreme. And there's this joke around like kind of like contemporary worship music and like rock churches. It's like at the end of the song, it's like you can always build it up for one more chorus. And like as the drummer, that was my job. You would kind of like boom, 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 like kind of build everything back up. So I think at an early age, I learned that music can manipulate people.
Huh.
And now I don't really think of it that way. But I mean, I would probably consider almost all the music I make, even the very, very out experimental music. It's like, I think it manipulates people or like strikes an emotional chord more than other music in my kind of world that sounds like that.
Yeah, for sure.
Yeah.
100%.
So it's built in for sure.
But it's that's interesting you said it. So you internalize it from being part of it from such an early age. You almost internalize that kind of thing, and now it just comes out naturally.
Yeah, I mean, like everybody's a product of like 1,000,001 experiences, and things that have happened.
Yeah,
I think that's just part of it. Like this idea of like your life experiences informing your art, and then your art going back around to inform your own life experiences again, and then it becomes this like cycle that's like shifting and kind of like morphs into different shapes, but it's like it's always going back into itself.
Mm-hmm.
And because like so many of the
it's fractal.
Yeah. It's like all of the experiences I have are like I was saying, 90% emotional, kind of quick adjusting to like whatever I'm feeling. So it's like if that is the ratio, which more or less it is, that's kind of the thing that keeps informing what I'm doing, and whether I know it or not.
Yeah. I think that's what I'm fascinated by, though, is how much of the choices, the creative choices, let's say, that we make, how much of that is intentional? How much of that is accidental? How much of that is internalized, things that we learned when we were a kid? I mean, that's partly why I like doing this show, is trying to untangle this thing that I don't think is actually untangleable, but that is at least worth kind of investigating.
Yeah, I love listening and reading interviews with people who are kind of tapped in with their own creativity and like their own way of working and like different like their process or whatever. Because I think that I'm not as tapped in with that, but over time, like watching other people untangle it to the best of their ability, like it's like yeah, like people who like use yarn for like crafts or whatever. It's like, do you ever see somebody get to the end of the yarn? And it's like you know what I mean? It's like there is an end. But I feel like only people who work on it for eternal periods of time like get to the end of that. So watching other people who can get closer to the end of that like ball of yarn all like wrapped up is where I can kind of, that's like I use that as like a guidepost for like how I do it. But I don't think I'll ever get there. I think about my own creativity a lot though, and like the way that I work. It's like very, yeah, I don't know. I everything I love is like so self-referential. Like all the art I love is, and so many of these things that are like self-referential are just inherently like not 100% tapped in or thought out. So it's this way of like, to kind of answer your question, it's like it's unintentional because you're so familiar with yourself that it's like even if you're making the choices, you're not necessarily clocking or like getting to the bottom of it for each choice.
Yeah. Do you think this, and this is so simplistic, armchair psychology, linear type stuff, but maybe there is something there. And you talking earlier about evangelical faith being kind of that flow chart that points back to itself. The form of that is the same as that kind of pointing back of like what is it? Reiterative? No, is that the word I'm looking for? But do you know what I mean?
Yeah. It's like the not redirecting, but like kind of like,
I'm just gonna say fractal again.
Yeah,
because that, I think that gets at a better way of. I just was trying to figure out a different word, but I think that gets at the heart of what I'm talking about.
yeah,
The thing that you're doing at different magnifications is the same thing. And this is very heady and abstract, but all I mean is that when you were younger, you were taught that as you went further into your faith, everything kind of just pointed back at itself, because to go outside of it would mean to have to acknowledge the contradictions. And in the same way, the form of that, of pointing back on itself, there's a kind of the way that creativity expresses itself in you, or that you express your creativity, because I hate that kind of too abstract, as if there is like a god of creativity out there hanging out with Hephaestus.
Yeah.
But do you know what I mean? That like the way that you there's some kind of, you got used to this idea of pointing back on oneself when you were younger. And then as an adult, when you make things, there is a kind of like pointing back.
Yes. I think that completely makes sense. I also just like, as far as like art and like music and like just other things people have made that I love, they're so contained within a world. Like these people create a world that like all of their choices and like creative kind of efforts work together and make sense within the context of their process, them as an artist or person, and that world that they've constructed that like everything exists in. A like very basic example is like, I've been revisiting a lot of music I listened to in like 2008 to 2012, because I think there was like a lot of music that was great and like missed, and like a lot of stuff that was like just like basic indie rock stuff that people don't necessarily see as like as grand as maybe I did. But there's this record that I really love by the band The Antlers called Hospice. That's like fucking concept record, pretty easy, pretty like, it's like a good record. It's like one of my, my favorite records of like indie rock, kind of like that, just like music. But it's like melodies resurface throughout the whole thing. I'm just thinking about this because I've been listening to it a lot lately. the whole idea of the record is like one concept, and there's like two different things that keep getting used as like a metaphor for the other thing. There's like fake characters kind of in it, but not in like a rock opera way. Just kind of like there's these like points of view, but it's like throughout the whole record, you have like these melodies or like these chord changes or like even certain words that are repeated so many times that it's like it all works within its own thing.
Yeah. Yeah. I love a motif.
Yeah, but you take that out of context, and that record judged against every other record that came out that year, or like every other record in that project's discography or something. It's just like it doesn't work exactly the same way.
Yeah.
And the power kind of lies within it being contextualized in whatever that thing is that was constructed by that person. So it's like everything works really perfectly if you keep it within that the realm of existence that it was created to exist in. So I think evangelical Christianity is that way. I think my own creativity is that way. Like, I'm not going to compare myself against like people who make like pop, like radio pop music in like a huge studio with like 75 people writing a song. Cause it's like, this doesn't work. Like, it's not like my work or way of approaching things will ever make sense in that environment. And I don't think that would make sense in my environment. But, yeah, I mean, that's an extreme example, but
no,
yeah,
I totally
that's kind of how I feel about everything.
Yeah. I'm older than you, so my version of that is the second Olivia Tremor Control album, which has this kind of motif that keeps weaving its way through it in different ways.
Yeah, Olivia Tremor Control is one of my favorite bands of all time.
Oh, well, there you go. Okay.
Yeah, that's great.
It transcends generations then.
Yeah.
Okay, we're towards the end, and there's just a couple things that I'm still kind of curious about. Born in Winnipeg, right? The move from Winnipeg to Texas seems so extreme that I am curious what prompted it.
I was a child. My dad just got a better job.
Oh, it's purely, what do they do for a living?
My dad was like an accountant but it was like for a company. Yeah, it is like, do you know like when you like have a job, but then it's like for a company that's subcontracted by somebody else that works for this other, it's just like goes through this thing, but it's like connected to 1,000 entities where it's just like,
Claire, I've been a temp or a freelancer for most of my life, so
it only exists within that world. It makes sense.
Worlds within worlds. Okay.
Yeah. And my mom's a piano teacher and did like under the table piano lessons, like for kids and stuff. Yeah. And plays out now.
Were they evangelical in Canada? Or was that something new that happened once they moved to Texas?
I think it was definitely like super Christian in there, and like there was an evangelical twist to it for sure. But I think just it really exploded. You get plugged into an evangelical church that's thriving in Texas, and you don't have like other community, and your kids are too like, I don't know. You can't like count on your kids to like make friends, because it's like kids will be friends with like some kid who's a piece of shit and their parents are even worse, or like some kid will be friends with another like kids will be friends, and then it's like, oh, that kid's nice, and then the dad's like, fucking cop or something, and then my mom's like, not gonna be friends with the cop.
Sure.
But yeah, it was like a huge change for them. I think I was young enough that it didn't really impact me as much. But the funny part is, we travel back and forth all the time when I was younger, because it's like my whole family lives in Canada, besides my parents and my sister. So it's like we would go back up, and I quickly realized that I-35, like the one interstate, that was what connected like Winnipeg and San Antonio.
Oh, really?
You don't leave. You're on that interstate for 22 hours, 23 hours or something like that.
Oof.
It's just one road. Like it kind of, they have like the sub kind of roads that like it gets different names, but it's like you don't actually leave. You go straight up and down. It's crazy.
Okay. So it wasn't disruptive to you because you moved when you were 10, right?
No, I moved when I was young. I moved when I was like a little kid. Yeah.
Oh, okay. So you were Wikipedia, not correct.
No.
Okay. So you were too young. So Canada didn't get into you. Winnipeg didn't get into you at all.
Not really. No. Yeah. But going back and forth was pretty wild. Like, my parents spent most of their lives in Canada up until that point. I think, they had both left like one time or something like that. But I was like a kid. But my whole family lived up there, so it was like kind of this idealized thing, and it would be connected to summer break, and what I can only assume was free childcare for my parents bringing me back up to my grandparents, that kind of thing.
Yeah.
But I loved Canada. It was great because it was like I would always be on Christmas break, summer vacation, spring break. Like as a kid in school, you're just like, this is the best time ever. Whereas like my parents moved, so it's like obviously they were moving for something that they thought was better.
Yeah. It's just interesting how you were formed by the most extreme strain of Americanism, which is Texas evangelical Christianity. Like that, like the extreme, like it's either Florida or Texas. If you really want to figure out like what is the most psychopathic form of America, it's one of those two states. And then the most psychopathic form of religion, well, I mean, it's probably a toss up between all the extremes, but in America at the very least.
Yeah. I think also like the idea of, because Texas has this thing, like when you're a kid growing up there, they very much teach you and ingrain like this idea of like, this is the Republic of Texas kind of thing. Ooh. In school. Like you do Texas history and things like that. So growing up somewhere where I'm like, yeah, I have like so much state pride, and I honestly still do. And I learned early on that Texas is like a little bit of a wild place. Like other states don't get as out. Like there's not as much space that is just like not really managed. Like driving out to West Texas, like if you drove out there, it's like and you went off the road or whatever into like a random spot, even if somebody owns that land, it's like it would take a while for someone to find you. Like the ability to live kind of outside of regular civilian life is pretty easy.
Did you know that when you were younger? Was it enticing, or was it just a fact of life? Like this is what Texas is, or was it something where you're like, oh, I kind of like this?
You learn how vast it is, but then also Texas is like one of the number one drinking and driving states, which when I was a teenager growing up, I was like, this is awesome. Because it's like, there's just so many things that are like made normal that are like pretty lawless. Like, I mean, it's like tons of people have guns. You're drinking, driving, and you have a gun on you, and it's like legal to have the gun. And it's like, that's like normal. That's like so normal. It's just like, and then you have like all the different climates, like it gets super hot. And then you have like the east part, like the east southern part, it's like swampy, like Houston, like going into like Louisiana, it's like super swampy. West Texas is like vast desert. And you start going up, it's like these like plains, and everything's built out. It's just like kind of limitless in this way. But yeah, I definitely had a sense of that growing up. And I think maybe that's why I started touring so young, playing shows out so young. Because it's like Texas is so big, I could like not leave my state and do like a 5-date tour.
Interesting. And then I guess finally, I have one last question before after this, but when did you start to realize that evangelical Christianity didn't make sense to you or wasn't right for you? Like, what was the process?
Like in high school, probably, I was like questioned some stuff before, but like really liked being at church, and like I was so involved. I played music. It's like, and because you like are working and being of service, it's like you don't necessarily like listen to the preaching all the time because you're always like behind the scenes, like organizing something, rehearsing, doing whatever. So it's like a lot of being like helpful or useful or like donating your time, but not necessarily digging into the stuff. Although I did dig into it pretty heavy at certain points. But just being a teenager, growing up, seeing kids in like public school, and I'm like, why is my life feel so different? But then also there was a huge group of people that I was involved with that were teenagers at church, and everybody started to kind of question stuff at the same time, and we would talk kind of like after services and be like, what's up with this thing? And I wanted to be smart, and I was really curious, and I just wanted to know more. And when you start asking questions and finding things out that are like tangentially related to the things that they talk about in the more designated church time, it's like kind of a game over. Like once I realized like like all of like the Gnostic gospels and those texts and stuff, like external stuff or things that were omitted from the Bible and different variations of stuff. It's like that's like once you're down that path,
Yeah.
you're not
Yeah.
going back.
I get
It's
it.
not, at least not in the same way.
Yeah. Yeah. I
Yeah.
get it. How difficult was it for you to break away from that then?
It's pretty hard. I mean, my whole family was in it. I didn't really know anybody who didn't, at least like the people I knew who were outside of that, like, and not church involved at all, were still very familiar with evangelical Christianity and church. And it was like this kind of like widely known, like, you know, it's just culturally, like, you know how it works, even if you're totally secular. So it felt weird to be like, I want to get out. But and it's like also like you don't have any guidance on how to get out. I was like reading like, you know, blog posts and like on forums and stuff, trying to like figure out what to do. And then also just being a teenager and like, you know, it's like a whole sexual awakening. And then I'm like, whatever I like, because of being trans and gay, and it's like I joke about this all the time. It's like I've been every type of gay from every different perspective, you know? So it's like growing up like a teenage boy who was like, oh, I'm gonna like start doing whatever, being into boys. And then I like had a girlfriend for a long time. And then it's like you're like in this very ambiguous gender thing, and then you're like exiting Christianity, and then I'm like, well, I'll have relationships with boys and girls. And then I was like, the non-binary thing was like kind of coming into vogue, and I was like, oh, that's great. It's like kind of like, you know, everything at once. And then I'm like, oh, I'm actually trans. And then it's like, oh, like maybe boys. And then it's like, no, that's not really what I'm into. And I'm like definitely into like this very specific brand of like white brunette girl kind of thing. So it's like, you know, having every kind of experience in that way, and then being like, how does this fit into this super rigid, like not ancient, but archaic way of viewing God and all these kinds of things. And it just doesn't work. So then I went to therapy. I had a friend in the church who had a really good therapist that was like, did specifically called like deconstructing your faith is like what people call it. So I was deconstructing my like evangelical Christianity. And it takes years, and it's like really hard, and you obviously lose all of your friends from that believe that stuff. It's like a total exile thing.
Yeah.
It was like a whole process. It took years. I was dating a girl who was like pretty secular at the time. Like, I mean, she's still secular, but I was dating a girl at the time who was like secular. Her family was very secular, and then she was doing this like, she was in college or something, we were dating, and I was like going to visit her, like where she would do like study abroads and stuff. And I learned like what evolution was as an adult outside of high school with my girlfriend who was like studying at like liberal arts kind of schools and stuff. And I was like, it's so crazy to me that you pay to learn this stuff. And it's like, this was like forbidden knowledge, you know, or it's stuff that's like dismissed as just so like out there. It's like, how could evolution be true when it's so easy to believe that like God made everything? Like,
okay, then last question. This is, I think this kind of rift, or if I don't want to make it sound like that, because you seem to have talked about it as being kind of continuous, just with like, all right, now I'm figuring out more and more things about myself and about religion and about my own faith and all this kind of stuff. So however you want to phrase it. But what I'm curious about is your own existential desires, how they either were maintained or changed through this process of both figuring yourself out and figuring out how you fit within this religion or not so. Because like, did you have a thing you wanted to be, like a deep desire of what you wanted to do with your life or what you wanted to create with your life that maintained itself through this? Or did you learn about your own existential desires through this process?
So I've always wanted to be on like a very basic level. It's like my mom was a musician. I started taking piano lessons. I was like 4 years old. And then since then I was like, I like music. I'll do something with music my whole life. I got really into playing drums when I was like 10-ish. And I got very good. Like I was like hired drummer, hired gun, session player, touring, playing, you know, shows to thousands of people, playing shows to 12 people in a bar, like just like any gig, right? Session persons. nightmare slash dream. So I always wanted to do something with music. Um, and much like the Christianity kind of thing, it's like the deeper you dig, the more it's hard to go back. So
Mm.
with music, it's like, I did the whole Christian thing and I kind of got out. But like as I was doing that, more worlds were being opened up, very involved in like DIY and like I was radicalized, like, you know, socially, politically, kind of at that same time. I was like deconstructing the Christianity thing and then getting into playing music out and like becoming an adult. It's like a lot at once, but that's usually how people become adults.
Yeah, but for some people, it is definitely it's not as fraught as the way you've described it.
Yeah, I mean, you're not like at a DIY show and then you go home and have a panic attack. You're like, I'm going to hell, I'm going to hell, I'm going to hell, which is like something that's very real.
Mm.
But all of that happening at the same time, it's like I was also getting into more radical spaces with music. So it's like, first I was playing normal rock music, and then I got introduced to things that I thought were like the most out things I could ever be experiencing. I went to a Portugal the Man concert in 2010 or something like that. I was like, holy shit, there's like a drone section. And like looking back on it, I was like, that was like probably 4 minutes of music where they're like making noise with pedals. So like, just like, but it's like the fact that that exists at all in music, I was like, well, I had no idea that you could do that. And then getting into like math rock and like noise rock and listening to like stuff on like Kill Rock Stars and like learning about like the 90s bands like Sonic Youth and like all that kind of stuff. Daniel Johnston, like learning how people record at home, Nutrimilk Hotel, Olivier's Tremor Control. I mean, the Elephant Stick stuff was huge, definitely. But as it gets deeper and deeper with the music stuff, then you get into like more academic stuff or more like straight up avant-garde or like classical music. And all that was happening at the same time. But like just like the Christianity, it's harder to go back. Where it's like you realize that these like very basic building blocks of music that you've taken for granted or like maybe not investigated further on, like it's like, oh, music can be made up of like sounds that are shorter than a second. You can make music on a computer only. You can make music sampling other objects. Like it's just like it gets so out there.
Right. Like kind of academic, like John Cage type stuff.
Yeah, I mean, I read a John Cage biography when I was probably like 20. And I was like, it's like one of those things where it opens your mind so much. And it's like such a basic read to me now. But I'm like, every name in that biography, every gallery, every performance space, every university, every program they talked about, I just like wrote it all down and then was like, I'll learn everything about every one of these things. And once you do that, then you're like, oh man, like music is so deep and it's all this stuff. And then it's like self-referential. It's like you realize there's all these little circles and communities and stuff. And then you can't ever go back to like only knowing the first 20% of, what it could be or something. And it just gets deeper. But this is kind of where like the identity comes in, where it's like with the Christianity, where it's like it kept looping back and it would become this like cyclical thing. In music communities and stuff, it's like that, like socially. But with like, studying music and like even academic stuff, and I didn't go to university or anything, like I didn't study music in any like official capacity aside from private lessons. It's like I still haven't gotten deeper, and it's changing all the time, whereas like Christianity is kind of this set in stone thing that like was like it exists this way starting a long time ago. So with music now, I'm like, the other day I was just like learning like different stuff where it's like coding to make this thing, or people come up with new software all the time, or like
it's dizzying.
But it's so cool because it's like this thing just gets deeper and deeper, and it's like you can learn so much about it. And there's so many different ways of making it, and I'm talking about just within experimental music, but it's like if I wanted to learn like, I have tons of friends who are just like so deep in like history of music in Brazil, and I'm like, yeah, if you just take it outside the context of like America or like Western Europe avant-garde music or classical music, it's like it exists everywhere in so many deeper different ways, and some of the stuff all works together. It's just like yeah. But unlike Christianity, where you're like you kind of get stuck and then it starts looping back, and then you realize that like you're kind of just doomed and you're trapped, where it's like music feels so infinite.
Yes. Okay. Look, this is very pat what I'm about to say, but it bears saying in terms of evolution, since that came up. thematically, and this is maybe the motif of this episode, but the things that you adapted to while in the church are also the things that once you moved away from that, you were able to, those parts of you fit into music filled in the same kinds of things, but in a deeper way.
Absolutely.
The niche changed, but and the parts of you that had adapted to Christianity that now were there to slot into music as a way of being, let's just say.
No, absolutely. And I have to do this. I talk about therapy all the time because it's just like, it's something I am doing.
Yeah, me too.
But it's like, when I'm in therapy, my therapist is always like making me talk like good about myself, which is like something that makes me want to fucking throw up. And I'm like, because I don't know anything and I'm a fucking idiot. I don't know, whatever, useless, stupid, all that stuff. And I'm just like so negative. And she's like, well, for me, it's like, you know, what's something that you admire about yourself? Blah, blah, blah. She's like, I see like a really curious person, somebody who's really invested in this thing, or like intelligent, whatever. And I'm like, God, so stupid. Like literally her saying that makes me want to kill myself more, but I can't say that because I don't want to get like fucking like called the cops on. But within this context, I'm like, oh yeah, like I've always been a curious person. I've always been like interested in learning more about something rather than like, I don't know, having like the most basic like knowledge and being like, that's enough for me. It's like there's never really that thing. So yeah, like digging deeper and kind of like investigating these things that I'm very interested in. Like it changes, but because one can go so much further than the other, it's like, I don't know. And one's more like ethereal, kind of like not, I don't know. You can't really prove it, but it's like, you know, play with some sort of program on the computer. And I'm like, I'm physically doing this. It is happening. Even if the music, because the music can be so theoretical too, if you get into that world, but it's like, yeah, it does exist. I'm like actually doing it. Whereas like believing in God, it's like, I guess you can actually do that, but it's like, it kind of gets, I don't know.
Ethereal.
Yeah. Metaphysical is,
Claire, what a delight. Thank you so much for joining me.
Oh my God. Thank you for having me. No, it was a joy to be here.
And we'll see you next time. Bye.
Bye, oh, bye, oh, bye, oh, bye, oh, bye, oh, bye, oh, bye.